Grant Gibbs on the right, 3, Doug McDermott. Start the question, or we'll start with statement from the head coach.
Obviously, I'm very proud of the team. Kind of won games more of a defensive strength, and up and down. Cal did a good job of taking some of the things we like to do away early. But defensively, our ability to take Solomon out of the game with the double teams and not get hurt by that, I think was huge. When you execute that to start the game, I think it creates some tentativeness on his part, and we thought keeping him from scoring and keeping him off the boards was huge. And he and Kravish were both close to averaging a double-double, and to win the battle on the boards after a year ago, I think they had 19 offensive rebounds to our 6 and out-rebounded us by 14 at their place. To turn the tables and out-rebounded them by 8 here was an emphasis all week, so it was good to see our guys execute that.
It's a huge win. I think Cal is going to win a lot of games in the Pac-12. I think they're an NCAA tournament type team, and it was just a huge opportunity for us, and we knew that coming into it. And we didn't shoot the ball particularly well, but I thought we really locked down and defended, and that's what got us to win the game. And they're a really good team. They're going to go a long ways.
Yeah, we just weren't as fluid as we usually are, moving the ball offensively, but, give them credit for that. I thought they did a good job of taking away a lot of stuff that we usually get pretty easily. But I thought it was important that we were able to, sustain our defense and really kind of win the game with our defense, because there's going to be nights like this where you struggle offensively, and I think it was a good step for us to win one with our defense. Yeah, for a full game, I think so, for sure. I think we've had stretches where we've played really well, but I think collectively, to a man, we did a really good job with our defensive schemes, the double teams, and then taking away other players' tendencies. So I thought this was our best defensive effort for a full game.
I was just missing some shots I usually make there to start. Maybe I was rushing it a little bit, and I finally got comfortable there after I got one to go, and I was just trying to get going by crashing the offensive glass and trying to get baskets that way, because I knew that's a way to get going. And then from there, these guys just did a great job of finding me in the right spots, and just a great collective group getting me the ball, especially in the second half.
Coach, where do you go from here? Not overlooking a sub-500 Chicago State team and the holiday season.
Okay, let's finish with these guys first so they can go, if that's okay.
Doug, your dad mentioned about the double team and the Solomon. How important was that to kind of maybe get him off this field?
Yeah, it was really important. We know he's a guy that gets frustrated if you really collapse on him. He's a really good player. He can score on anyone one-on-one. So, we practiced on it all week, every single day. That was the huge emphasis, is to take him out of the game. I think we all bought in. It wasn't just the 2 post guys that were double teaming him. It was the whole group, knowing where to be at when the ball came out of the trap, and, everyone was on the same page, and it's great that we could execute it.
Yeah, it feels good, and we talked about that a little bit before the game and in practice, because it's important to get that win right before the break. It just makes Christmas a little bit better, so hopefully it'll work out that way.
Can you elaborate on what your dad said about the work you guys did on the boards tonight?
Yeah, that was the huge emphasis all week. You know, we watched the film of our game last year, and it's basically just them bullying us on the glass. And you know, we took that to heart, and we made sure that Kravish and Solomon didn't get any offensive boards. You know, they got a few, but for the most part, we did a really good job of just boxing out. It's not just you got to, when you're boxing out Solomon, you just got to take him out completely. It's not all about getting the rebound. It's about just taking him out, and I thought we did a really good job overall.
Hey, Grant, last year Doug let us in on his favorite Christmas gift, which was, I believe, a Shaquille O'Neal jersey or something. Seeing that this is the last time before Christmas, can you enlighten us on maybe a memorable gift that you received Christmas morning as a young lad?
You could have gave me some more time to prepare for this.
Gonzaga jersey you got when you were young, or?
I don't know.
All right, while you think about it, Doug, your jersey's being given as gifts. How weird is that to little kids? I mean, kids are asking for your jersey.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty surreal, to be honest. Just seeing all these kids with them on, and it's definitely real thankful for that, and I hope they enjoy those. But it is what it is.
Come on, Grant, save us here, bud. We got 3 days of material to fill.
I don't. If somebody got me a Doug McDermott jersey, I'd be pretty stoked. So.
Doug, you mentioned Solomon gets frustrated when you bring that double team. Did you get frustrated about that first period, that first half? Did you?
Getting double teamed.
Yeah. Double teaming and some of the stuff they were doing.
Yeah, I mean a little bit. It's just one of those starts I didn't really get in the flow early, and I just finally relaxed. But it's always frustrating when they're throwing a lot of different guys at you, and switching everything, and we just really weren't getting some of the shots that we're used to getting. So we just had to really settle down there, and from there it was fine.
In years past, obviously, like you look at the conference, who else does well, you look, cheer for the Missouri Valley, build your RPI, et cetera. How strange has it been this year to look at? I mean, do you guys see the scores, cheer for Big East teams? Do you think about it that way anymore? I mean, how's that?
Yeah, I really do. On my phone, the first thing I do when I go to ESPN, sometimes I find myself going to Missouri Valley scores, and then I have to switch it over to the Big East. But I really like following those games, and there's a lot of good teams this year. Like Xavier got a good one last night at Alabama. We were watching that, and just it's great following all these new schools we're about to face.
Like 2 more for the student athletes.
Grant, you talked about what you guys did to inside. What did you guys try to do to them outside to maybe get them off their game?
Well, I thought we did a really good job in knowing their sets, and I thought everybody, once again to a man, really knew what kind of actions they were going to run, and we did a good job of sniffing stuff out. But, chasing them off those screens, and obviously they have a couple guys that can shoot it well from the perimeter, and I thought the guards were really locked in on that. And then Austin and Avery did a really good job on Cobbs and knowing what he likes to do. He really likes to get to 15 feet and pull up. That's kind of his game, and I thought they did a really good job of taking those shots away and making them beat us in other areas. So credit to them being locked in on what they needed to do to contain him.
Anything else? All right.
Christmas, brother. I think he wants you for radio.
Continue on with questions for Coach.
Go ahead. No problem.
Just talking about looking at a sub-500 Chicago State team and Christmas break, and then a lot of excitement of gearing up for the Big East Conference opener with Marquette at home New Year's Eve. How do you kind of control that for your team?
Well, because we only have really 1 day to prepare for Marquette in between, we'll work on Marquette some right when the guys get back for the first day and a half. And then we'll turn the page and we won't talk about Marquette again until after the Chicago State game. So we'll get our normal 2 days prep for Chicago State on the 27th and 28th. But Christmas night and the 26th we'll spend primarily on Marquette so we can go back to it on the 30th. I felt it was important that we play a game after Christmas, after the guys have traveled, before we jumped into Big East play. I tried as hard as I could to get it on the 27th or the 28th, and we couldn't do it. So it's it's a little closer to the Marquette game than I'd like it to be, but I really felt it was necessary that one take place before we jump into the conference play. Well, I think they knew Christmas night practice would be a little bit more enjoyable had we won rather than lost. They scored on 1 out of their first 10 possessions to start the game and 1 out of their first 7 to start the second half. And anytime you can establish that part of the game and have it be that much in your favor, especially the first half when we only scored 2 out of 10, for us to score 2 out of 10 and be up 6-2 is a real testament to, as Grant said, the guys were locked in. Trapping the post is a 5-man job. It's not a 2-man job. Understanding tendencies and making sure we're taking away some strengths. I thought our guys did as good a job tonight as they've done all year. And, outside of the last 5 or 6 minutes where they're in desperation mode and putting their head down and going to the basket, I thought we did a good job of taking them out of what they like to do. Now, having said that, Krecklow didn't play with an injury. Jabari Bird got hurt. Let's be honest, Cal was a little banged up as well. The ball was moving, but we weren't moving, and that's what we kept talking to him in timeouts. I thought Doug was a little stagnant, and we were just trying to get the switch we wanted and get him in the post, and then he just has to remain patient once he gets there. In the second half, he had a little bit more patience, and we made some hustle plays. We got some second opportunities on the offensive glass. We got 2 offensive rebounds on the last play of the half. Great hustle play by Ethan, and Doug stayed with the play. The guys competed, they moved better, the ball moved better, but it all started at the other end with stops. To hold a team like Cal to 19 points in a half is pretty solid defensive effort.
I think the crowd was really getting into defensive rotation too. Like every time we held them down to 10 seconds, the crowd was getting into it. Is that what you're hoping for when conference play starts?
Absolutely, we have to have that because oftentimes, and I think we're the same in this regard. Teams are gonna come down. They're gonna run an action. They're gonna try to score. And if you stop that action, now all of a sudden there's 15, 16 seconds left in the shot clock, and you have to go to a secondary action. And our fans are educated enough to understand that we've done our job and taken away what they wanted to do. And now we just got to defend their late shot clock actions. But our crowd was great tonight on a night that there wasn't a lot of extended offensive runs, and part of that was I thought both teams played pretty well defensively.
Given the quality of the opponent, is this as good as you played defensively for a long
I think the first half was about as good as as we played because Jabari Bird was on the floor most of the first half. You take him out of the action, and they're playing some guys that hadn't played extended minutes, but to hold them to 19 points with most of their regular rotation in place was a heck of an effort, and that's a sign that the guys understood the game plan and understood what they were supposed to do. And it's one thing to understand it; it's another thing to execute it. And tonight, fortunately, we were able to do both.
Expect a lot of games to be like this in the league.
I don't know, Tom. It's I think there's been some high scores in the league at times in non-conference, and then of course you get some grinded out games that you see as well. I was able to watch a little bit of Marquette last night, and that game went up and down at a pretty good pace. But I think it's going to be like tonight. It was physical inside. The shot went up. It was a man's game to keep those guys off the boards, and I thought our team rebounding and ability to go block somebody out consistently was really, really good, and I think that's going to be important in the Big East as we see, a lot of front lines like we saw tonight, really night in and night out. Yeah, I mean that's what everybody does, and Doug said he wasn't frustrated early. I think he was a little frustrated early, and he just has to let it come to him, and he's played enough to understand that. That sometimes the first he's a guy that likes to get off to that hot start, and he's done it a lot. So when that doesn't happen, he gets a little frustrated, and he just needs to understand that first 4 or 5 minutes, you're scouting it out. You're figuring out, okay, here's what they're doing. Here's what I can do to counter that, and it's not going to come all at once. You have to pick your spots, and I was proud of the way he finished the half because he finally let it come to him rather than forcing a few things.
Obviously, you want to be 11-0, but it's always say 9-2 going into Christmas. You're happy with where you're at?
Well, after the George Washington game, I'd have taken 9-2. You know, as I've said before, you know, we had the ball with 30 seconds left, down 3 against San Diego State, and got a play going to the basket with a chance to cut it to 1 or possibly tie it. And then we had the lead inside of 2 minutes against George Washington. You know, 2 games that we have to find a way to finish. So it's not like we're not far from being perfect, but we still have a lot of room to grow, and that's what's exciting. And it's really important that we get back here from Christmas and get locked in as quickly as we can, so that 9-2 becomes 10-2 before conference play starts. Every one of these counts, and you know, we haven't had a lot of opportunities in the past to have this type of game. You know, right before Christmas, where you have a program that's been in the NCAA tournament a lot, that's going to come to your place and give you what you hope is going to be a resume win as the season goes forward. So, you know, I like playing this game, and I lost to South Dakota State when I was at Iowa State on the last game before Christmas. One time, somebody was kind enough to remind me of that in the newspaper the last few days. But it's part of it is trying to get your guys locked in. You know, you got guys that are a long ways from home, that some of which don't get to go home at all the entire semester, and it's human nature to want to go home and see your friends and see your family and to get them focused for that last game. I think that's why you see some crazy scores on December 20th, 21st, 22nd every year that don't make a lot of sense, and it's because a lot of times guys have their 1 foot out the door. And to play a team like Cal, there's really no chance your guys aren't going to be focused because they understand how good they are. So I like the fact we had a great opponent right before Christmas. Our crowd gets excited about it to see a team like that in here, and our guys really remain focused.
You guys, everybody going home, or just
Jahans and Devin, I think, are the only. Devin's got some friends from Iowa Western, some families that he got to know that he's going to spend some time with, and I think Jahans has been with me pretty much every Christmas, so this one's no different.
Have you seen Marquette at all much? Obviously,
You know, we were in California together, so you know, my staff has seen him play a lot. I wasn't at a lot of those games just because I was with the team preparing us to play. So I think we've got a good handle of what they do, and I mean, there's no secrets to Marquette. They're gonna compete. They're gonna play hard. They're very disciplined with their defensive plan, and then offensively, they don't make a lot of mistakes. And they're gonna make, you know, most times you've got to beat Marquette. They're not gonna beat themselves. And you know, obviously last night in New Mexico, the coach's kid had a great game. A kid that was coming off the bench, and you know, that was a difference in the game. So it's they're a good basketball team. They're going to win a lot of games before this season's over. I'm just glad I'm seeing Doug McDermott in his jersey one more year. That's a gift enough for me. That's pretty cool. Not often, no. One of my players is right there. He sure as heck didn't get me anything. Tyler played for me at Wayne State. You know, there was parents that would send stuff. I had a player at North Dakota whose mom would, they were from Flint, Michigan, would send me sweet potato pie every year. Up until when she passed away several years ago, she'd still send it in the mail. So it's good. You know, it's been fun. As I've gotten older and been in coaching longer, you're getting Christmas cards of your former players with their families, and it's good to catch up. Merry Christmas, everybody.